Mike Nadolski from the Mendel Center. Welcome.
Hi, and I'm Julia Gorley-Donahue, the Executive Director of the Krasl Art Center. It's great to be here with you all this evening. City of St. Joseph, a couple of months back, decided to form a social justice committee to deal with some of the events that are impacting us nationally and certainly in our own community as well. Krasl Art Center's Deputy Director, Tammy Miller, stepped in to lead the Arts and Culture Subcommittee of the Social Justice Committee. And we're thrilled to have commissioners from both cities joining us on that subcommittee, and they're here with us this evening as well. So it's my pleasure to introduce from Benton Harbor, Commissioner Isom, and from the City of St. Joseph, Commissioner Getty.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm up first.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Julia. Good evening. I'm Commissioner Edward Isom of Benton Harbor. First, I'd like to thank Krasl Art, Lake Michigan College, and the Art and Cultural Social Justice Committee for use of this time for this special presentation opportunity. I want this to be a call to action for unity for both cities as we work together to resolve any systemic racism and other forms of social injustice circumstances in the two cities. I support the positive community change by activating and empowering residents to propose and implement projects that make a difference in our community, connect with artists, community organizations, and local government, then partner to develop creative ways to highlight social problems and promote solutions. Art is a powerful tool for the transformation of society and individuals. We are all in this together, and I encourage all participants to connect with the Art and Cultural Social Justice Committee and the African American History and Literature Gallery or the Race Relation Council for ways to become further involved. Right now, I would ask all listeners and participants to listen with an open mind and heart to Donna Walker-Kuhne's presentation and discussion with the panel following. God bless you. God bless Ben Harbor and St. Joe community. Unity. Thank you.
Thank you. And good evening to all as well. As Julia mentioned, my name is Peggy Getty, and I'm a city commissioner with the City of St. Joseph. I participate on the Arts and Culture Social Justice Committee as a liaison for the City Commission. And on behalf of all of us, I'd like to thank the Krasl, Mendel Center, Lake Michigan College, and all of the many folks who helped organize this event. I'd also like to welcome Donna Walker-Kuhne to the Twin Cities. We're eager to hear and listen and learn new ideas for local action. I recently read that art provides a universal language that gives voice to individuals and communities that can cross social boundaries. It inspires dialogue about problems faced by communities around the world. Please be open to everything that comes your way this evening and allow yourself to embrace different possibilities, opportunities, views, suggestions, and interests. And lastly, I invite you to participate in the Arts and Culture Social Justice Committee and to work with your city commissions and local organizations to foster a more diverse and more welcoming community. Thank you very much and enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Julia, real quick before we do the introduction, I just want to make sure people know you can do the Q&A questions along the way. And so if you don't have your Q&A, look down below and you should be able to see that opportunity to submit questions, and we'll be watching that for that. So thanks.
Great. Well, it has really been a wild year, and I don't know about you, but every once in a while, my mind drifts to, wow, what does the work that I'm doing have to do with making the world a better place during this time? Certainly during these past few months, that's crossed my mind a few times. And so I'm thrilled to tonight introduce tonight's conversation, Creative Expression, Why the Arts Matter in Times of Crisis. Because they do, and I know they do. And after I've had a conversation with myself and seen the impact of the Krasl Arts Center and our partner culture organizations in St. Joseph and Benton Harbor, I know that that impact is real. And so tonight it's exciting to me that we'll be spending this evening and sharing this conversation with our community, Creative Expression, Why the Arts Matter in Times of Crisis. Donna Walker-Kuhne is an accomplished marketing professional. She's a lecturer and she's a published author. She has spent her career helping to build meaningful relationships and collaborations between diverse communities and between cultural organizations. It's my pleasure to introduce tonight Donna Walker-Kuhne for this evening's presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you are all well. I am so excited to be here speaking with you, and I'd like to extend my deepest appreciation to the Krasl Arts Center, to the Mendel Center at Lake Michigan College for your very kind invitation. And so, you know, I wanted to just give a little background on who I am. I won't need the slides just yet, but I can let you know when I do, because I'm going to speak first. I wanted to give a little background about myself so you understand how I approach my work and how our experiences influence everything that we do. So I am a daughter, a mother, and a sister. My pronouns are she, her. I am fourth generation post-slavery. And my parents were part of the Great Migration from the North to the South in the 50s, 1950s. I grew up on the South Side of Chicago in a very close-knit African-American community, and continued to thrive there as a member of an African dance company. I performed and taught dance. And then it occurred to me around the age of 14 or so that I didn't really know anyone who made money as a dancer. So I decided I better go to get a career where I can get a regular paycheck. So I decided to be a lawyer because I wanted to change the world. And I went to Howard University Law School, where I continued to dance and teach, and got married and moved to New York. So that's how I got to New York. So I began my career as a lawyer prosecuting juveniles in family court, but realized that really wasn't what I wanted to do, and I wanted to be more involved with the arts. Fortunately, across the street from family court, there was the Thelma Hill Performing Arts Center, small art center that was very close by to my job. And so I started to go over there on my lunch hour and do volunteer work. And over the course of a year, I taught myself how to be an arts administrator, from reading the proposals, looking at press releases, building plans and budgets. And I was having such a good time that my lunch hour was extending until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, clearly way beyond the time I was supposed to be back at court. So I resigned from family court, wrote a proposal to pay myself a salary as managing director, and became the managing director of the Thelma Hill Performing Arts Center. So I did that for a couple of years. And then I said, I want to get back to dance. And I want to be with an African-American organization. And Dancer of Harlem just was right in front of me. And so I wrote a letter to Arthur Mitchell. When the day my letter arrived, I didn't have a resume. I wrote him a letter. The day my letter arrived, he called me and he said, I got your letter. And it was 2 weeks before City Center engagement, and they were not selling many tickets, and the marketing director had resigned. So he called me right away and he just asked me, can you sell tickets? And I said, yes. So I was hired, and that was the most amazing 9 years working with the Dance Theater of Harlem, using all of my skills as a dancer, as a lawyer, everything, and just touring with the company and really seeing the difference, how the company was treated abroad and how we were treated in the United States. Very different. That's where I started to really see what systemic racism looked like. We were in one city, and I had asked the manager of the theater to please open the star dressing room for Arthur Mitchell. And he said, oh, that's reserved for our stars. I said, Arthur Mitchell is the star. He created this company. And he said, oh, no, we can't do that. And so one of the things I've learned in my career is to leap, go to the top. So I called the mayor. I said, we have a problem. Can you please take care of this? Which he did. He managed to get it open, but he also renamed the dressing room to the Arthur Mitchell dressing room. And so I've learned how I have to navigate how we have to be a warrior for the arts every step of the way. One of the things we observed with Dance Theater of Harlem was a lack of people of color in the audiences. And in working with the presenters around the country, I found that they wanted to engage African Americans, but they didn't really know how. They didn't have a strategy or the relationships. And so I started to create an audience development national task force, which involved my traveling to that city 6 months ahead of our performance date, galvanizing the community to build a promotional campaign, and then having them really feel that they were responsible for the success of our engagement. And this effort increased our box office income by 45%. And then I did this not only in, nationally, but also in New York. And so for 9 years, this was the embodiment of my work with Dance Theater of Harlem. I was very happy dealing with African-American culture. And then I got a call from George C. Wolfe, who was the producer at the Public Theater in New York. And George said, I heard about you, come in. And so he said, I've been here at the Public Theater for 3 months, and the audiences are predominantly white. I'd like this place to look like a subway stop. How would you do it? And so I just brainstormed with him what I'd done with the Black community, and I can do that with all kinds of diverse communities. And he thanked me, and I went home. A week later, I got an offer to create a new department that would lead in this initiative. So another 9 glorious years of translating that vision every single day, George C. Wolfe, and then moving to Broadway. And so that took me to working on shows on Broadway, and then traveling around the country with a national tour of Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk. And then decided to start a family. And so I resigned from the public and hung up my shingles to do consulting. And my clients include dance, theater, museums, all kinds of different arts organizations. It's allowed me to travel around the world, to Europe, to Russia, to Australia, South Africa, Berlin, Croatia, talking about audience development and community engagement. And then I was invited to come to New Jersey Performing Arts Center 8 years ago. To be the vice president of marketing, which I accepted. But that's the first time in my career I was not able to do audience development. And I missed that. And I saw an opportunity to engage the local community in Newark, which is not 79% Black. I said, I want to be able to engage them. So we created a new department at New Jersey Performing Arts Center. It was the second one in the country for community engagement. And that allowed me to develop a number of different programs, which I'll talk about a little later. And so what I've learned is the importance of sharing the information. So I wrote my first book, Invitation to the Party, which documented my experiences at the Public Theater and Dance Theater of Harlem. And I write and I teach at several universities here in New York. And so, there've been 3 life-changing moments in my career connected to the arts that I think demonstrate why the arts matter in times of crisis, but also has shaped my belief, values, and strategies. So the first one was in South Africa with the Dance Theater of Harlem, where we were invited to integrate the Civic Theater in 1993. And this was right when Nelson Mandela had been released. So the country was extremely fragile. Looking at the dissemination of, or the destruction of the apartheid system and this new leadership coming in, and then enter African-American dance company from Harlem. And my job as a director of marketing at that time was to build a campaign that would include Black South Africans to come to our performances. Well, we had one legal challenge. At that time, Black South Africans had to abide by a pass. And this pass said you had to be home by 10 p.m., which meant they could not make our performance because the curtain doesn't come down until 10. And so as I'm sitting around the table with 12 of the presenters and producers, and then myself, and I'm asking them, that we have to really change this dynamic. I know we can't change the laws, but we have to figure out how we will be able to perform for African Americans. And we did that. We came up with presenting 250 workshops during the 3 weeks that we were there on tour, in addition to the 8 performances we did per week. And so we just found a way to be able to make that happen. But what was really life-changing for me, was they gave me a tour of the Civic Theater because they were completing the renovations. And as I walked through, the workmen who were Black South African, they stood up, they put their tools down and stood up. And I said to my escort, what are they doing? He said, oh, they're paying homage to you. You're the first Black person to walk into this theater that's not a laborer, but a free person. And I thought, wow, 1993, we're still checking off those boxes. So that just demonstrated to me the importance of the effort, the importance of our being there, the importance of really battling to make sure there was equity in our performances. My second pivotal moment was during my time at the Public Theater. It was right after 9/11. And, you know, the country was just deeply hurt and just really, you know, trying to figure out what's next. You know, we were wounded. And so certainly in New York, we really felt that, and in Lower Manhattan. And we had planned speaking series, you know, that I had been producing that was to occur in October. And, you know, 9/11 was September. And so October, we were going to have this big speaker series with, at the time, Poet Laureate Rita Dove and several other authors. And we just questioned, should we do this? Maybe it's disrespectful for us to present art at this time when we're all still grieving. But then George said, we're artists, and this is what we do. This is how we fight back. So no, we're going to go ahead with this. And so I would have been happy if 10 or 15 people came. I had no idea how many people would actually show up. Well, we had over 300 people in a room that really could accommodate 100. And these people came and they sat down, and I saw, as Rita Dove recited her poetry, I saw them with their eyes closed, and I could see the words that she was saying flowing down their face like a balm. It was the most extraordinary experience I've ever had, seeing the power of the arts in the time of crisis. People came seeking solace. They were seeking a way to be comforted, and she delivered that along with the other writers as well. The third pivotal moment in my career was on one of my trips to Russia. I've been to Russia 3 times, invited by the government to teach on audience development. And I was explaining to the group about my work at New Jersey Performing Arts Center and how we were teaching the youth about the history of the civil rights movement. And I was talking about African Americans and, you know, what we do and our struggle. And, you know, and one of the students said, Donna, why do you keep saying African American? Aren't you an American? And I was taken aback. I said, he doesn't know. And none of them knew. It was a room of 50. None of them knew, really, the history of racism in America. So I had to back up and, you know, teach them about that, you know, very briefly. But I also talked to them about, while working with the youth in Newark, New Jersey, teaching them about the civil rights, we did a screening of the film Selma. And we had, you know, transportation for them. We had a talk back. It was a wonderful, wonderful evening. So I ended the session for the day. The next day, they all came in looking really kind of somber. And I said, what happened? They said, we went back to our homes and we watched the film Selma. Next time, start with Selma. So that taught me, one, don't assume people understand when we're talking about race and culture from the United States. And number two, you know, to really make sure that the foundation of what you know, we're talking about with regard to the civil rights movement is really clear, so people can follow the narrative. So those are just 3 from the past 40 years of my work in this field that I still remember and are very dear to my heart. What I wanted to share with you today is really thinking about and talking about the importance of the arts in time of crisis, but also supporting the arts from a financial perspective as well. So, you know, since the tragic killing of George Floyd, you know, earlier this year, there have been scores of news reports about hundreds of millions of dollars that have been pledged or donated or committed to fighting racial justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I believe a portion of this money should be shared with arts organizations to help facilitate and foster the social changes necessary for transforming this era of racial injustice into an era of recognition and respect for the dignity of all people. So why give money to the arts? Well, throughout every pandemic, and racial injustice is indeed an epic pandemic, the arts continue to define, shape, and sustain the narrative of our general population. Artists are natural innovators who can provide insight and help us consider solutions to the challenges we are confronting. And the work of artists stimulates collective imagination, stirs our sense of possibility, and has been shown to inspire us to action. The arts often challenge us to examine our perceptions and probe our fears. And most importantly, to engage with the arts is to engage in a dialogue with the work and see ourselves in other. From music and dance to theater, spoken word, from paintings and sculpture, photography and design, the arts historically have been our greatest source of light and hope whenever we have found ourselves mired in chaos, confusion, and darkness. So I want to share some of the ways I believe the arts can best be utilized to ensure that this is indeed a transformational time in America's history. So anti-racism, arts education initiatives that empower children to recognize racist behavior in themselves and others, and it provides them with the language and social skills to address it. So I believe we want to make sure this work is being done with our children, as you know, in elementary school and pre-K, and with funding being affected. This is another reason why this monies that are being distributed need to make sure that it's given to the arts for this purpose as well. We also want to fund new productions of works by artists of color, works that leverage the arts to address both history and racial injustice and provide opportunities for learning, growth, and healing. And so, of course, we want to preserve the legacy of many of our playwrights of color, but there's also so many other new stories to tell that we want to make sure have the support to do that. See, I don't believe, I'll tell you a secret, I don't believe that the arts equals poverty. And I am very, very vocal about that, that because we choose to be artists doesn't mean that we have to live in poverty. Where is the abundance of that? So we have to advocate for that. We have to really push for that. Civic organizations should partner with the arts as a platform to demonstrate and promote the vision of what building a just and equitable society looks like. I'm on board of Harlem Week here in New York, and Harlem Week is a 47-year-old event that takes place over 3 months. Even though we call it Harlem Week, it takes place over 3 months in the summer. Outdoor activities, over 100 events, performing all kinds of different activities, as well as a marketplace that stretches for 6 blocks. And so what we have done is to work very closely with the community. So in addition to presenting performances, we have retailers that are our partners. We work with the hospitals that are our partners. We have our art exhibitions in the lobby of the hospital. So not only can the public come in, but the staff, the doctors and nurses have told us so many times how refreshing it is to go downstairs and have a break, seeing the art and how that inspires them to go back to sometimes very difficult scenarios. We work with Whole Food markets when we work with our Cuban community, and they have a Cuban sandwich bar. And so we bring in the artists, so they're performing live music while people are getting their Cuban sandwich and coffee. And it creates this experience that's dynamic and engaging. You know, we work with our faith-based community. We work with the colleges to have college fair. So civic engagement is critical for the arts to continue to thrive. Sometimes we become a little insular and we kind of feel that everything has to happen in our one sphere. But the more we can engage and spread the work that we're doing, I think the richer the product becomes, and certainly the product opportunities. Civil rights organizations should also incorporate events, performances, and workshops to artistically translate and help implement social justice initiatives. So some of these resources also could be used to help arts and cultural institutions establish long-term programs that address issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion, so that the future of these organizations accurately represent America's growing multicultural population. And so we can embed this idea of equity, diversity, inclusion, social justice as to how our arts organizations do business. That ensures that the legacies continue, that the work continues, because it's now become part of the DNA of how they do business. So the Ford Foundation recently announced that they've partnered with several foundations and major donors to make available millions of dollars, I believe it's $120 million, in unrestricted national and national and regional grants to arts organizations in communities of color, for arts organizations of color. And they're calling this America's Cultural Treasures. It is absolutely an amazing and brilliant initiative that shows how we can look at funding and direct that to what is being marginalized to be able to really capture and protect, America's cultural treasures. And so Darren Walker, who's the president of the Ford Foundation, he decided to provide this critical funding to organizations that have had a significant impact on America's cultural landscape, despite historically limited resources, and to honor the diversity of artistic excellence and expression that they represent. So to date, actually, it's been close to $160 million has been raised, and monies have gone to the Apollo, Dance Theater of Harlem, Ballet Hispanico, the Mexican Museum. I mean, they've been distributed throughout the country. And I just think that is an example of moral leadership, of saying that I have these resources and I'm going to make sure that they are being distributed in a way that will ensure America's legacy. Darren Walker also stresses the value of diversity. And he says, diversity for me is about excellence. I think regrettably, diversity was framed by some and continues to be framed in a way that suggests that diversity correlates with the loss of equality, of quality. And actually, the research shows that the more diverse an organization is, the more excellent they are at whatever they do, whether it's a corporation or an arts organization. He says, I don't talk about diversity without talking about excellence. And I always keep that in mind. So the more diverse we can make our efforts, whether it's staffing, programming, marketing, the more we're building a platform of excellence, the more we are addressing and including the very communities that we want to serve. So that has to be at the forefront of our minds. We have to keep thinking about that. We have to be intentional about that. And so I wanted to share with you now just a few slides from the New Jersey Performing Arts Center as a case study on how the arts, have really been responsive to critical times, and what we've done there in New Jersey to really be able to support our community, but also to help change the landscape. So may we have the slides, please? So as I mentioned to you before, we created a community engagement department. That was about 6 years ago. Next slide. And we created it as an outgrowth of our marketing department with strategies and resources to really look at the diverse communities of Newark. And the goal is developing long-term relationships with multicultural professional education and faith-based organizations that have the potential to create deeper access and creative use of our resources and cultural programs. So again, you have to be intentional as you build these initiatives. It's not just because it's a nice thing to do, but it's because we're looking at long-term relationships, establishing partnerships where we can grow together and utilize each other's resources. And so we have programs such as NJPAC in your community, which we developed with our community partners, and it takes out our programming into the community. Next slide. And so we produce or participate in over 200 events per year with close to 20,000 people that attend, totally separate from ticket buyers who come to the Art Center to see a show. These 200 events are off campus into the various wards and neighborhoods, bringing the arts to the people. And I think this is essential. And this is the distinguishing mark between community engagement and audience development. Audience development, which is the work that I did at Dance Theater of Harlem, the Public Theater on Broadway, is transactional. That is targeting a particular group of people for them to purchase a ticket or to come to a free event. But the idea is that I am engaging you for you to be able to come and participate with what I'm creating. That's audience development. Community engagement is about creating access to the arts. It's not transactional. It is to let you know that we have dance workshops, we have jazz panels, we have film screenings, and we're going to be in your neighborhood. Come check it out. And that's the expectation, is participation, not to purchase a ticket. Of course, if you want to, we're never going to turn that away. But it's two different functions. And I think we need both to build healthy arts organizations. And so we maintain relationships with 120 engaged partners. And these engaged partners, they help us with our social media. They distribute our collateral when we have performances to distribute information for. They promote within their own organizations, and they may purchase tickets or attend a free event. Our department also generates newsletters. And in these newsletters, what do we talk about? The community. We celebrate local heroes. There's always community champions. Make that part of how you do business. It doesn't have to be once a year. We're always acknowledging, and we call them community champions. And in every newsletter, we're highlighting someone who is doing positive things in the community to help enhance the quality of people's lives. They love seeing themselves in these newsletters. They just get super excited because it's an acknowledgement and it's great. Next slide. And so on Thursday evenings, we started pivoting our well, I'm sorry, let me back up. Once the quarantine began March 12th, which I'm sure you all remember, and we were all told basically to go home, we still had about 50 events remaining in our fiscal year to produce off campus. And so we had to pivot and put all of that in a virtual space. And so this is what we did. Again, arts responding to crisis. At that time, we still had 4 or 5 months worth of live performances generating millions of dollars that now was completely removed. And so all those artists that were going to come and do these live shows, we didn't have that anymore. So how do you still be engaged with your audiences? How do you still let them know that you're relevant and vibrant? Well, community engagement stepped forward. We already had our programs packaged so that we could easily put them in a virtual space, whether it's Zoom, Facebook Live, StreamYard, whichever platform we chose to use. One of the things that we used to do live that was really fun was DJ parties after a live show. So for instance, Chaka Khan would come, and Chaka Khan turns it out. So after she's finished performing, people still want to dance. So we hired DJs in the lobby. So you come out of the theater and now you hear a DJ spinning Chaka's music and people just go crazy. They throw their purses down and these people, everyone's just dancing like it's a fever. So how do you still hold that feeling? Well, we put it on Facebook. We went to local DJs to spin different genres each week. So every Thursday, you tune in on Facebook and you hear different type of music. So you dance in your kitchen, you dance in your living room, because of course we had to be, safe and smart. So this was the first live series we offered during the pandemic. And it was incredible, the number of people that participated. We had 150,000 people, that normally would come to our Sounds of the City, which was an outdoor event. And then we had the same numbers and more for when we went virtual. And that was exciting. Here's some of the photographs of some of the DJs that we had, all local. So now we're really giving platforms to our local artists, even to a greater degree, because of course we can't bring back these touring artists, but we can celebrate our local ones. Next slide. Then this was just some of the numbers of the different DJs when they performed, each week, how many views, how many likes. So as you can see, it was into the thousands. We could never have that many people in our building, these numbers. Our building, we have 3,000 seats. Our lobby at one time can probably accommodate 1,000. Yet, because we're online in a virtual space, we have almost 16,000, 33,000, 46,000. So of course our sponsors are kind of happy about that, because one of the reasons sponsors give money is for visibility and for their brand to be seen by their target demographic. We were able to deliver that visibility in an even greater space by going online, virtual space. Next slide. So jazz was something that we've done, community engagement has focused on at NJPAC for several years. Jazz, I find a challenge to market. because you find it's a limited number of people that really want to pay money for jazz. And so we had a number of free jazz events that we would do in collaboration with our local synagogue. Ahava Shalom is the one remaining synagogue in Newark, New Jersey. Each year, we plan a number of jazz events that are rooted in civil rights. And this came out of the synagogue. This was their desire to do this with NJPAC. And so that includes panel discussions, art exhibitions, performances. So now we can't go to Ahava Shalom for our jazz. So what did we do? We took it online and called it Jazz Tunes, where we got, again, some of our local jazz voices, jazz mavens, to talk about conversations about jazz. And so we did this on Twitter, not Twitter, what's the other one? Instagram. We did it on Instagram. And that was really exciting. And you can see from their faces, they were having so much fun. We also decided, okay, so we can't have live performances of artists, but we do have artists who've been a part of our family. We're going to interview them and find out just what are they doing? What are they thinking? So we call that backstage at home interviews, where we had like 1,000 people just checking in to see what are these artists doing? What are they thinking about? We all have these rich resources. What we've done in NJPAC is learn how to really utilize all of that to sustain connections with our audiences. Next slide. Books on the Move is one of my favorite programs. I developed this program when we first started the department because I love reading. I devour books. And I wanted to make sure that children of color understood the cultural legacy of multicultural iconic figures who have performed at NJPAC. And so we did our research to find who has books, how can we bring these books to the children? So we called the libraries a wonderful partner. So every year, we take our teaching artists, Wincy Terrace, to 35 different libraries throughout the state of New Jersey. We go all the way to Atlantic City. And she reads a book to children in the library as part of their family reading series. The book is hardcover, which is important because we give a free copy of the book to every family. And we want the child to feel special, having a hardcover book that makes it really precious. And she does much more than just reading the book. She brings a character to life. And so one of the books we use is Misty Copeland's book, Firebird. A book we use, Alvin Ailey's autobiography. These are all children's books. We use a book on Celia Cruz, Ella Fitzgerald. These are Tito Puente. These are all artists that have a footprint at NJPAC. And so by bringing them to life, allows these kids to see themselves, allows them to learn, and for the libraries to be able to fulfill their equity, diversity, inclusion efforts. So now we have the pandemic. Can't go to the libraries, they're closed, we're closed. What did we do? We put it online. So on YouTube, we have a YouTube channel. Anyone can watch these pre-recorded videos any time of the day. So they're available for families. They're looking for an alternative to teaching the kids the regular subject matter. They can go and enjoy one of the books on the move. This is also the most funded program for community engagement. All of our funders love books on the move. And so it's something that people can really identify with. Next slide. So as a dancer, and our director of community engagement is a dancer as well. So we just can't help ourselves. We make sure there's lots of dance going on. And so before the pandemic, we were doing dance workshops all throughout New Jersey. We were at dance studios, churches doing liturgical dance studios everywhere. Just really help having people feel what is it like to move. Because in marketing dance for so many years, I've learned that audiences are pretty much of a mindset. If it's ballet, that's for people who understand ballet or feel comfortable with it. But if you haven't been exposed to it, then the response is, oh, I don't know what that is. I don't understand the story, or no, I'm not gonna go. If it's modern dance, and you're accustomed to going to that. If you're Graham fan or even Ailey, I find people will say, wait a minute, is that movement where people dance with no music and their faces are all twisted? Nah, I don't want to see that. So what do? We bring dance to the people. So this is what we did for our dance workshop. So we brought all kinds of different genres into community so people could feel like what it's like to move. In addition to the dance workshops, back to our corporate sponsors, where we have hospitals as some of our sponsors, they would come as well and talk about healthy eating, healthy living. We then went to Whole Foods, who would then bring green drinks for people to see, oh, it doesn't taste so bad, I can try this. And so you're combining the opportunity of the movement along with corporate sponsor engagement. And this is how you continue to grow your initiatives. But in March, we went virtual. So what did we do? We put it all online. So we call it Wellness Wednesdays. These are virtual dance classes. You can see all the genres that we've been playing with. I mean, the Bhangra, the Bollywood, the jazz fusion, the samba, voguing. Oh my gosh, that's so difficult. I had no idea voguing was so challenging. African dance, our yoga. So we've done 26 of those so far. Of these dance classes, and we've had over 2,500 people participate since COVID to today. And so this is extremely popular. And what I'm really excited about is our teaching artists are all local. Some of them are college dance majors, some of them dance professionals, some have their own companies, but we're celebrating our local dance champions. And so these are people that we know will be with us when we open back up and can have socially distanced performance. These 2,500, they're going to be some people who will want to see live performance and want to see some of the things they were participating in. But if they don't, we've already achieved success by the fact that they took these dance classes, and they're all offered on Zoom. And I watch every single one of them. And we now have regulars. So we have mother-daughters, you have families, you have, all kinds of different people, and they are serious. They're really invested in these dance classes. It's just wonderful to see. Next slide, please. So one of the things that Newark does very well is to celebrate their elders. And we have elders in every community. And so as part of our advisory council, we have 5 committees in the New Jersey Performing Arts Center Advisory Committee Council. One of them is we have Latino, we have our elders, we have dance, we have jazz, we have LGBTQ. And for our elders committee, we started talking with them, okay, what would you like to do? And they said, we want to talk to the young people because they're confused. They're running around here just acting crazy. And we have experienced everything. So let's set up some dialogues. So we called it Pearls of Wisdom. And so on a monthly basis, we have these intergenerational discussions on all kinds of different topics. It could be about music, it could be about health, it could be about poverty, parenting, whatever they decide they want to talk about. But these dialogues are so rich and wonderful. And again, we're highlighting our local champions. These are all Newarkers who have really made a difference in the quality of life. And now they get to share that with younger people, high school, college students, young professionals who want to learn, from their seniors. So COVID hit. What did we do with this program? We put it online. So we have these now in a virtual space. We do them, and it's amazing to see these 80 and 90-year-olds navigating Zoom. I mean, they got it. They were like, wait a minute, let me unmute myself. I mean, it's been extraordinary to see how you can create magic out of such tragedies, that COVID-19 has brought. But this is how the arts respond in times of crisis. This is what we do. We step up. Next slide. And so in addition to what community engagement produces, some of the other staff at NJPAC have decided to be creative too. And so we have a program now called 10 Newark Creators, highlighting young innovators who make Newark interesting. And they literally talk about what they do. Some are artists, some are writers, some are hip hop artists, all kinds of really interesting topics. And so this series happens once a week, and we have close to 500 people that are watching this. These are all low-hanging fruit events with very modest budgets. Because like you, we have no earned income. That's done. I mean, when I look at the sales report, it might be $100, $200. Our annual budget was $45 million before the pandemic, and our earned income is close to zero. And so we don't have a lot of money to pay for all of these events. But what we do have is innovative ideas. We have local resources and connections because we maintain these relationships. We do have virtual platforms that we can encourage artists to be able to share their talent in space. Next slide. Another innovative program from one of the producers at NJPAC is called Jersey Fresh Open Mic. Now, you know, young people love open mic. They love to be able to, you know, it's just like America's Got Talent. And so this is what we're doing, having a virtual open mic to spotlight up and coming talent from New Jersey. We have enough people to do this for 2 years who have auditioned and sent their material in, but it's one of our most successful events. We have over 2,000 views, you know, 1,000 clicks and, you know, 6,000 Facebook people that are watching this because it's their friends. So it's like we're developing a brand new audience as well as sustaining our current audience. So we will be ready when we reopen. We will still have, you know, who we have been nurturing for all these years. Next slide. So this is a program that I developed over the summer, a social justice initiative. After the murder of George Floyd, I went to John Schreiber, the president and CEO, and I said, as the state's arts center, we have to be responsive to this. It's not enough to have a statement of solidarity like everybody else did. We have to do something. And so we put together this programming committee of social justice with staff cross departments who really are passionate about this. We crafted a mission statement and we started programming. And so we now have programming. We started in June and we're planning through June of 2021, specific programs that address social justice, that look at systemic racism and have an action step. Not enough to talk about it. It's got to be, what are you going to do about it? So for the first 4 of these, we have focused on voting, and we have approached voting from every direction you can think of, you know, to encourage our participants in Jersey to vote. The second big initiative we have was completing the census, because the census brings money. If you don't fill out the census, then you are overlooked. You don't get the hospitals, you don't get the clean schools, you don't get the stoplights. There's so many things you don't get when you don't complete the census. So we focus on that. That's the action steps that accompany each of our events. So we did panels on democracy, choice, and power. 13th. So the other component of this, I'm sorry, I meant to tell you, we had been, before the pandemic, we had a film series funded by PSE&G called True Diversity Film Series. And these were films that we would show every month with a panel discussion on socially conscious topics. We would screen films on poverty, water shortage, sex abuse on college campuses, all kinds of topics. So we went to our funders and said, okay, we can't do these in person, but we still want to continue to screen films through the lens of social justice. They were like, yes, let's do it. And so our social justice initiative screens films as well. So how do we do that? So we decided to make it like a book club. So a week before each panel, we send out the link to the particular film. Watch it anytime you like in the safety of your home. Then join us for a panel to talk about the film and the theme. And so we talked about voting. We did the film 13. We did Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility with an all-white panel. They were a little nervous at first. They said, you're not going to, there's no Black people on this panel. We said, nope, this is your issue. White fragility. You guys talk about it, work it out. And it was excellent. All of this is on our YouTube. You can see any of the things that I'm describing. It's all on our YouTube channel. Go to our website. Understanding and Solidarity. That's the name of our whole program. And so, of course, next week, the voting will have concluded. Census is already completed. So what are we advocating for? We're looking at policing the police. What do we do about that? Letter writing to our elected officials. Speaking up. Supporting organizations who are also advocating on our behalf. You know, we're looking at where do we go from here? That's actually a 2-part panel because we'll have young people talking about what do they see for the future. And these are people from 18 to 22. will be on this panel telling us what do they see moving forward, as well as established arts organizations and artists telling us what do they project. We'll look at Black entrepreneurship. We'll look at our LGBT community. We'll talk about reparations, all kinds of things that all directly affect the Black community. We're very clear that's the lens in which we're doing our work. We have a women's association at NJPAC that has 2,000 members, and we collaborate with them as well when we're looking at a topic that focuses on the lens of women. So there's a lot of internal collaboration that creates a product that we can then deliver to our communities. Next slide. And so coming up, one of our main events is our Kwanzaa program. And Kwanzaa is something that, is very important to us. And we're going to use it, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. And then we created 7 programs that will respond to those principles. All of this will be virtual and online. So thank you. That's for the NJPAC. So I just want to close. I'm just looking at the time here. Just wanted to close by talking about, to bring our community together and encourage everyone is something that we really feel very strongly about at NJPAC. And I'm encouraging everyone to think about what can you do to also expand in this way. I think also, we talk about how do we raise leaders for the next generation? How do the arts respond to this need to have leadership? And so we should make available paid internships to artists and arts administrators of color specifically. That includes a stipend, that includes the cost of living expenses wherever they're working, so they don't have to take a second job in order to work there and learn their craft. And so while we are, the vanguard and really advancing this forward, we should always be raising our right hand and left hand. Who are we bringing with us? That's critical so that the field always remains robust and we're growing things. I think also without safeguarding and engaging the arts at this juncture in our nation's history, we're likely to return to, the time of when the arts have not been that important, where we see white supremacy and racial injustice infiltrating even how we present the arts. So this is the time to stand up, step up, and however you feel you can be an advocate for the arts. And so I'd like to close with one of my favorite writers, Arundhati Roy. And she did an article for the Atlantic Monthly at the beginning of COVID-19, which is pandemic number 1. Pandemic number 2 is uprooting systemic racism as a result of the murder of George Floyd. And pandemic number 3 is the divisiveness that has occurred as part of our political election. So we're faced with lots of challenges right now. But this quote that Arundhati wrote, I believe, is applicable to this entire landscape. And I will close with this. She said, historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies, or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. So let's do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Donna. I was pausing for applause.
Oh.
It's so wonderful. Your energy is so infectious. I mean, this is the problem of not being in person, is because we do need to celebrate the message that you just delivered to us, because it was just so rich and so from the heart and so astute. Your observations and the examples from the New Jersey Performing Arts Center, right on track. I mean, we can talk about applicability in our community as we get into the panelist discussion. But I did have a couple of questions that came in. I want to get to those. And I have about 3 pages of my own questions.
Okay.
I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while. But one place where I wanted to start is because we do have a diverse audience in many different ways. We have patrons of the arts. We have professionals who are working in various aspects of the arts, not just performing arts, but the visual arts from the Krasl Art Center and all. But in your work with the public theater, timing wise, you were there before the biggest show that they ever did, I believe. How close were you before Hamilton?
Oh, I left the public in 2002.
Okay.
So in Hamilton, I believe, was probably 10 years ago.
Yep.
But bringing the noise, bringing the funk had
Yep.
the same impact as Hamilton.
Right.
So I know what that fever is like.
Yeah, but with that history, you talk about in your book about how it's a long journey. Audience development work's a long journey. And I was wondering if you take any pride in the work that the public theater still does to this day, because the work that you did there
Yes.
set the ground, set the foundation, created the audience that create the,
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know that, you know, I did my best, and I know that that contribution is actually into the DNA of that building. It's in the DNA of the culture there. And in fact, they invite me back to come and talk. I was there last month. So things that they don't change. With Dance Theater of Harlem, I volunteer and support them. So it's once it's in your heart, you're not going to let that go.
When you have such an inspirational message and your spirit's so infectious, what is your source of strength? Where do you pull your strength?
My source of strength is my Buddhist practice. I chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. I have been a Buddhist for over 40 years. And in my sect of Buddhism, which is with the SGI USA, you know, we really chant for our happiness. That is our fundamental belief. And we believe in cause and effect. We understand that by doing our human revolution, by polishing our lives, then we can become the best person to contribute positively to society. So that's my belief. And so from that, I do all of my work, and I do it with joy and love.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm thinking in the face of all that positivity, it's such a struggle sometimes. I think back to my time in the 1980s in theater in Chicago. I was producing work in Chicago for a small improvisational theater company that shared a stage with Second City and put people on Saturday Night Live and so forth. But in the mid 1980s, I was invited to attend the League of Chicago Theaters, and the theater was exploding then. There were probably 80 theaters, I think, that opened up in a short period of time there. And I was on a panel discussing non-traditional casting and why African Americans weren't coming out to be in shows, and how to get, I mean, it's all the same, you know, 40 some years later, it's still a lot of the same work. Why haven't we gotten it right yet?
Power and money, and systemic racism that says that you actually just don't matter. Are you familiar with Dear White American Theater, the letters? It's a 31-page document that artists of color presented to the producers on Broadway right after the murder of George Floyd. And the summary of it is, we have endured systemic racism as we've tried to perform and work on Broadway, and we will no longer tolerate that. And this is what you've done to us. They have all the examples. And this is what you can do to cure this. And they are advocating this with such aggressive behavior. I mean, they're really demanding meetings. I'm on a committee that's called, thank you, Grace. I'm on a committee that's called Black Lives Matters Marketers for Broadway. And these are all of the marketing staff that work on Broadway said, we don't want to work in this environment if we're not being responsive to African Americans. So we've come up with a list of things that we're going to be presenting to the Broadway producers. But ultimately, having done marketing on over 20 shows on Broadway, sitting in a room where I'm trying to get a budget of $5,000 to do some radio ads that I have built a campaign around, and watching them very happily agree to spend $100,000 on a New York Times double truck color ad for the weekend, which they're not really sure what the deliverable will be. I've experienced this kind of systemic racism while I'm trying to support the goal of bringing audiences of color. So I see the barrier is power and money. So now there is an awakening of this because people of color are really pushing this. The same letter was sent to all of the nonprofit theaters as well. It's listed on their website and they are watching. They're calling out theaters that are not engaging with their board to see more diversity, more programming. So this is a movement. This is a movement right now. So I don't think it's going to continue in the same way.
That comes at it from the owners of theaters, and it would apply to cultural institutions in general.
Yeah.
As that people need to think about reshaping to remain relevant.
Yes.
But turning it around to patrons, because I know we have a lot of people who are arts patrons and supporters.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have the power of ownership, although they can, with their contributions, vote, I guess, in some ways. But what can patrons do to further institutions being more welcoming?
There's several things. So patrons can certainly advocate for a more diverse space. So you can ask for that. You don't have to wait for the marketing director to come up with a plan. When you go to a show, this actually happens at NJPAC for our classical music series. Some of our older white audiences says, I'm tired of coming here and seeing the same people. What are we going to do? What can you do? And so we started to create more programs that would invite people to see that. But I'll tell you, classical music will continue to struggle until we change the definition of what is classical music, until we change who's on stage, who's conducting, until we change who we select as composers, that music is also classical. So that goes back to authority and power. So once that changes, we'll see a change in the audiences. They're not quite yet ready to relinquish that. And so when that happens, we'll see a change with the audiences. So I think audiences have more power than they realize. I think you should speak up about that. That's number one. Number two, look for organizations that are doing this kind of social justice work or EDI work and support them. Even if it's checked for $50, that means so much. It means you're investing in this effort. And be specific about it. You know, when you know, to tell them, I want to support this effort. I believe in this. Because then your development department will start to think, oh, maybe there are more people like this. Maybe we should build a campaign around this. This looks really good. Then for your social media, as a patron of the arts, when you see something you like or you really want to support, talk about it. Use all of your platforms that you have. If you're a member of a church, talk about it there and see how can we get our church to really support this effort. I work with the faith-based community for 40 years. They're the best audience group that I've ever worked with because they're organized. Black church community, organized. And they believe in it, then they're coming. And I work with the ministers, but more importantly, the ministers' wives, because they like to have their own project and their own, name on something. And so that has been a very successful model. So we need patrons to be proactive, to be present, to speak up, and to use your money whenever you can.
Terrific. I have a couple of questions from our participants, and then we want to get to the panel discussion and invite you to continue this discussion with the panelists as well. So one of the questions that came in is, do you think you will continue some of the online projects at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center post-COVID?
Yes, we've already decided that we will. We're not sure which ones, but we like that platform. We see that it works for us. And so, yes, we will. We will also, I forgot to tell you. So for Harlem Week, when I described the 100 events that we do for a 3-month period that takes up 6 blocks, we converted all that online this past August. We did 100 events online. And that was a huge effort, but we made it happen. And we got, we have 250 million media impressions from Harlem Week because it became global. You didn't have to fly into Harlem to participate in all the various things that we had. We had Lincoln Center as a partner, City Center, Jazz at Lincoln Center. So many cultural organizations gave us content to put in the virtual space. So we definitely want to keep that model, and we'll do some things outside. You know, we think about what will it look like 2 years from now in terms of the performing arts, because it's still going to be another year, I think, for people to really feel comfortable, and all the surveys have said that as well. I do think that when that happens, you know, we will have a variety of ways people can experience the art, from the comfort and safety of their home to being present physically. So, you know, we have to be nimble. But one thing I'm not doing is looking back to say, I wish we could. No, that door has closed. It's just like our Dante Roy said, it's a portal. Let's step through. Let's move forward. We don't have to drag all that stuff, especially the stuff that didn't work. So be innovative, be brave. Think about, how can I really keep advancing the arts? That's what makes us human. Without the arts,
I second that for sure. I have a question that it's a little bit on the technical side, I guess, but it's pretty foundational. Could you please explain the difference between views, reach, and engagement?
Oh, okay. So views is, each organization can kind of decide how many, what does a view mean? For us at NJPAC, if you on Facebook and you click on, and you're watching something, if you're there longer than 10 seconds, we count that as a view. Different organizations have different metrics. Some people say 3 seconds. We say 10. Some say 30. It's up to you. You know, right now, this is such a brand new field also. This whole virtual space is creating all kinds of new opportunities. So that's how we look at views. Reach is, how many people do you have, you know, in your bucket? So for us, you know, it's like, how many people could we potentially reach? And those are the ones that we're seeing that are responding, you know, to us. And then the engagement are those that we have discussion with, or they're writing in the chat, or like, for instance, when we do the DJ parties, we have that long line of comments where people are doing shout outs to their friends. They'll say, hey girl, I see you dancing in the blue dress, and you know, all kinds of things like that. So that's the engagement, where you can really see a person is participating versus someone who may have clicked on for 10 seconds, 20 seconds.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
You're welcome.
And I will ask one more question, and then I want to open it up to the panel. But another question just came in. How much support do you receive from governmental sources, and how important is government to your work?
So with regard to NJPAC, I would say that probably 20% of the unearned income comes from federal funding, which includes the State Council on the Arts and the NEA. Majority of our funding comes from foundations and corporations. You know, New Jersey is home to some of the wealthiest corporations and individuals. Just on the board of NJPAC, we have 3 billionaires. We have the founder of ADP. We have the heads of several hospitals, the head of Panasonic. And so that's where the majority of the funding comes from. From a federal level, I mean, the poor NEA only has what, 150 million for the whole United States. And so it's like managing expectations. How much do you think you can get from such a small pot? And so we decide to go where there's a much broader landscape and opportunity. I think that the government funding should be as expansive as possible, but under the current administration, you know, is always being attacked, as well as in general, the culture in America towards the arts, at least from the public funding, federal funding perspective, has always been very minimal. You know, the NEA and NEH always have struggled with trying to make sure they get approval from Congress, that they can be sustainable, that they can grow. And I believe that's because of the culture of the arts in America is quite different from that of any place else in the world. You know, when you think about America's age, we're, you know, what, several hundred years old. So we're kind of like teenagers, you know, compared to all the other continents and countries. And so teenagers are confused about sex, and it's all about me. And so when it comes to the arts, I still don't believe we have embraced that fully as a country. And that if you think about who were the first people who were lost that landed here in America under the guise of Columbus discovering America, that's a whole nother lecture. I'm not going there. But at any rate, those people who were convicts and being kicked out of England, they weren't thinking about preserving arts and culture. And so you think about the foundation of America, built on slavery, and then having this kind of mentality coming in. We didn't have there was no sensibility that the arts are fundamental to how we live. And I believe that has carried forward, and we see it exhibited like in our federal government. We see it in different ways. So very different from Europe, which, cherishes the art. Africa is just embedded in the culture. India, you can't go any place where you don't see it. Asia, every place but here. So that's some of the work that we have to do.
Well, that tees it up pretty well. That gives us a nice national and really global overview of the issues in front of us. And I'd like to welcome our panelists now to join us in this discussion and try to localize. So if you panelists want to unmute and join with video as well. And I'll introduce Traci Burton, a community influencer, Lisa Cripps-Downey, president of the Berrien Community Foundation, Tasha Turner, MA, LPC, CTP, program director, Trauma Informed Initiatives, Population Health at Spectrum Health Lakeland, and Mamie Yarbrough, Berrien County Commissioner. So welcome one and all to the panel discussion. And also I want to encourage you to keep having your questions come in. We're happy, we've talked to the panelists in advance and Donna, and we're happy to hang out even past 8:30 here. So as you think of questions, please send them in. But I wanted to let the panelists begin by just talking about their perspective on the arts. Why do the arts matter at all, let alone in times of crisis? And just to get your voices in the room, to give you an opportunity to just from your perspective, share your view on that, the title, the theme of this presentation. So Lisa, if you wanted to start us off, no pressure.
Sure, no pressure. First, Donna, thank you for sharing with us. That was wonderful. I was taking notes madly. I think from our perspective, or from my perspective, the arts matter in so much because oftentimes the arts are what brings us to action. If we go to if I go to a play, I go to a concert, I go to something about art, I'm going to think about that. I'm going to process that. I'm going to talk about it more, and it's going to bring me to a change of mind. It's going to bring me to a change of action. I think about how we use the arts even in community action. Miss Traci Burton, the phenomenal Traci Burton, we needed to get people to take action and fill out the census. Okay, it was just something that how are we going to do that? Traci did a video. She used her art, her ability to reach people in ways that would make them take action. It drew attention. It drew attention to issues. And I think the arts are something that just bring us together as a community, help us to learn, help us to engage.
Thanks. Great start. Traci, since your name was invoked there, why don't you please enter.
Sorry, Traci.
It's okay. First of all, I just want to say I'm so glad to be on this panel with such phenomenal women. Second of all, I want to give honor to a couple people who are watching right now, who really embedded the meaning of arts to me. Number one, that's my father, who is a national recording artist. Number two, that is Miss Skinner, Miss Matner now. She was my dance teacher. I had the privilege of attending a performing arts school, 1st grade through 5th grade. She was my dance teacher, and now one of my best friends. And not necessarily somebody that's watching, but entity as a whole, definitely the Black church, who allowed me to express God and art in so many different ways. So one thing I will say is that living in Berrien County, now being an adult and a mentor, I see the gap in what it looks like when art is not readily available to people in the community. And that's why I fight so hard like I do, because that was so readily available to me. And I know that I would not be the person I am today if it had not been for the services I received at Craswart, CMW, Ms. Goins, Cove. Like I can name them off, and I can ask anybody on this panel, can we do that today? So I think that's the biggest call to action, is we need to be able to name it off like I did, because I know that there is a distinct difference between those who had the performing arts and was really reared in that type of education versus those who don't.
Thank you, Traci. Thanks.
It's beautiful.
Tasha, please share with us your perspective on the arts from public health perspective and your own personal perspective.
Sure. So the alphabet soup that you provided that goes behind my name, for those who don't know all of those acronyms, really just licenses and certifications related to mental health. So I'm a licensed professional counselor. I specialize in trauma and mood disorders. And so I do not only therapy work, but then I do a significant amount of community education here in Berrien County, and specifically in our really high needs areas. And one thing that I say all the time, Traci has heard me say it a bunch of times, is that while we can't all be therapists, we can all be therapeutic. And there are many ways of healing and expressing and releasing, and the arts is one of those ways. And I don't even mean like formal art therapy, even though that's a thing and a wonderful, beautiful thing. Just having access to the arts, as Traci was speaking to, is an outlet that often surpasses language, that doesn't require oftentimes, you know, many of those things that we find to be barriers, but arts can be created anywhere with anything, whether you're by yourself or with a group of people. And so I just see such beautiful freedom and flexibility and healing that can happen in that space as individuals and as whole communities. And as we think about surviving, we've been surviving in this pandemic, and with the issues of systemic racism, so often the most powerful pieces are expressed through art that may not say a word or may use just the most beautiful composition of words or colors or space. And that is a way of expressing, releasing, and communicating to one another, whether it's our needs, where we've been, our journeys, where we've arrived to. And it's just so important. And unfortunately, so often that's what's cut immediately, is the arts, these things that are seen as frivolous and, well, it's on the outside, right? In academic space, it's the first thing that's cut, when in reality, it's one of the most important things. And if I get a little sciencey on you, and I promise I'm gonna shut up in a minute, we know that just engaging in creative activity actually resets the nervous system. So when you're talking about being overstressed, when you're talking about trauma on an individual and community level, there's actual science that tells us just engaging in something creative actually resets those processes. So it's important on a physical health level as well. So that's my spiel.
Thank you for sharing it. It's a great spiel.
Yes.
Mamie, you have such a phenomenal story, and I see you everywhere. Can you please share with us? I mean, it's hard to separate you, how I know you, from art. It seems like I see you in all the places where art is.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I want to say to our presenter, Donna Walker-Kuhne, I love you. I don't know how this can be, immediately. I want to say I like you, but it's more than that. You have hit everything I've ever wondered about, wanted to do, have done, can do, because can something come out of this? We're spending our time, I don't know how to use the computer well, but I'm getting better with the Zoom, and I've Zoomed a lot of people. And I just want to say to you all is that I live in the arts district. And I used to think about, I'd like to live in an artsy fartsy place. I'd like to be where there are restaurants and music and lessons and plays and performances. And my daughter found us a place to live. We had lived 30 years in our house, and I'm celebrating 12 years in a loft in the Benton Harbor Arts District. It's the neighborhood where I grew up. I lived here from the time I was 2 years old until I got married. So they talk about regentrification or whatever. This is where I am supposed to be. This is my home, and I am doing all the things. I have friends, there's a wonderful lady, Miss G. She was doing live shows, comedy, and she said, it's clean or it's not clean, and do it at churches and things. And then the pandemic came. She started doing Zoom, and you could see people in their houses eating chicken wings and drinking and watching, you know, we're all watching each other. Yeah. And then she did a couple of shows outside on the lawn right by Michael's property. Bring your chair, bring your snack, bring your water. Mm-hmm. And we sat outside and listened to shows that were comedians. Then Lake Michigan College did about 4 or 6 shows this summer. It was like going to the drive-in theater, but we were going to see music. And one of them was on my birthday. I had bought tickets for 2 sets, fill the car up and come. And so there are things we're doing here that you have mentioned. And I'm gonna tell you what my one desire is. We have a new superintendent of Benton Harbor area schools. And we formed an alumni. Somebody said, we need to do alumni. You know how your school is. We have people all over the world that are lawyers, doctors, Indian chiefs, they're everything. And people just responded within a couple of days, 1,500 or more. And so we're working on that, and we're going to do all these things that you talk about. We're going to be able to do them. And when Traci talked about it, I go to things, sometimes I don't even know what it's going to be. I think, well, I won't do that anymore. But I support, and I read the paper, and I see the events. A lot of things happen here that are free. And all the people that are on the panel, and Tasha I have never met, but I see them at things. I go to support them. And this is what people have said to me. They say to me, and what is your medium? And I say, I'm an audience. You need me. You practice, you study, and if I didn't come, it would be for naught. And that's what I know. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Mamie. Thank you. Julia, I don't know if you want to join us, but you're welcome to. I know you're there, but please join us if you would like. And I'm going to, because I'm an improv guy, I'm going to set my questions aside and ask you all to share instead, because I know you were all riveted, and this is really a call to action, to share anything that really struck you that you think is actionable that we could begin to work on, because we do have the Race Relations Council, we have the Art and Culture Social Justice Committee working, we have MLK celebration, community celebration reimagining happening, and there's so many initiatives that are happening right now, and you know, people have marched together, peace rallies across our bridge and in both communities. And I mean, there really is a moment that's happening here. If anybody is particularly inspired to share something that really resonated, please, I want to give you this opportunity to share that and breathe some life into it.
Mm-hmm. Could maybe share first, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I think what just stood out to me and was actually really affirming was just more broadly just this idea of what community engagement means. And you know, we talk a lot about when you're doing community work, good community engagement is not just acting on the community, but really involves community voice. And, you know, here at Spectrum Health Lakeland, and in particular, the Population Health Department, we are trying to be very intentional about that. And so seeing an organization that has done that and kind of the things that you reap from that, like I said, is very affirming. And I would just encourage anybody who, whether you represent an entity or you work for one, that, you know, to really take that into account. You know, some of our most recent projects, we have just vetted our ideas with our community folks, such as Traci, one of our community influencers, to say like, hey, do we do we have this right? Or better yet, tell us what to do. And some of our, what we thought were good ideas were not so much, right? Because when we put it through the, okay, well, how would the community actually be able to use this resource, or does this actually meet the need? You know, even though it was well-intentioned, it would have missed the mark. And so by getting that community feedback, getting that direction from the community, you know, you're not just designing good programming, but you're designing good programming that's going to be used by the people you want it to be used by.
Mm. Mhm.
I didn't.
Oh,
Go ahead. Sorry.
I think about who you put together tonight to have Commissioner Isom, Commissioner Getty, Commissioner Yarbrough. That's the government. He may need permission to do some things. And then when you heard Julia Galdi talk about they do something at the library. I'm the president of the Benton Harbor Public Library. They do things at on the properties, on the land. We have to be outside. We're trying to space and, you know, all of that, but there are beautiful buildings and things that have been rehabbed that we look forward to using. And then we have all our students that need to be exposed to everything there is. So we have the frame and the ideas and the things that Ms. Kuhne has brought to us have been, you know, my head is just clicking, and I don't want to do anything. I just want to go somewhere, but I would.
Thank you, Mamie. We did have a question that came in from a participant. What is our immediate community goal for intentional development to bring arts to children, parents, and adults in the community?
Yeah.
So that's somebody challenging us to step up, and I don't know if we have the answer to that right now, or Donna, if you have a suggestion. Oh, Julia, please.
Yeah, I won't say that it's a complete goal. It's not a complete vision. It's not complete work. There's always more work to be done. But I mentioned earlier during the annual meeting portion of the talk that the Krasel Art Center has been doing these free family days twice a month for a long time. And the idea behind the family day is that it's a free workshop. It's getting families to do things together. It's offered at the Krasel Art Center, and it's also offered at the Benton Harbor Public Library. So it's, you know, we're not asking people to come to a place where they might feel intimidated to come to, but we're bringing the programming to them. We found that program to be really successful. We enjoyed it. The families enjoyed it. There was a lot of demand for continuing that work. But of course, when the pandemic hit, that was an opportunity for us to rethink and refocus. So right now, what we are doing to bring the arts to families and to children are these fundles. And I mean, it's wild. This started probably back in maybe April, May. And I'm not kidding. By this weekend, we will have distributed 700 art kits. And we distribute them into partner organizations. We distribute them through housing facilities. We distribute them through the library. We distribute them through neighborhood associations. And, you know, they're art resources with a tiny little curriculum. So this isn't, you know, highbrow art making. This is finding a way to be engaged that's off the screen, that's getting your mind thinking about making something that's tactile, that's active, and something a little bit different. And they have been a really important way for us to still feel like we are being a resource to our broader St. Joseph Benton Harbor community in a meaningful way. So those art fundles have been critical. And for me, you know, I'd say that that's step one in continuing to be relevant and present from an arts education standpoint. And there's more, you know, and I will say, whomever inquired about this, I would love to talk to you more about the work that the Krasel Art Center is currently doing from an education and an engagement with students standpoint, but also from a planning standpoint. You know, we don't have all the answers. And the beautiful thing about this time is it's absolutely okay to take risks.
Yes.
Because that's what everything is new.
Yes.
So
it's just like our Dundee Roy said, walk through with little luggage, create a new era. It's a portal. Let's just walk through. Yes.
So is there an idea? Is there an opportunity? Are there resources behind making the idea something we can try? Let's try it. You know, we love to say yes. and let's try something new and radical and see if it sticks and see if it's beneficial for our community.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, at the Mendel Center, we're, using this pivot opportunity, this reset button to work on the business, because when, normally we're doing 300 some events a year, it's hard to slow down, to look and to listen and to ensure that we're relevant. And so we're doing a listening tour and called 100 Conversations, where we're getting out and talking to people.
Wow.
And trying to actually find the people who don't even know we exist or don't like what we're doing, and find out how we can change. Because we have a discovery series, and like the Krasl and like other institutions, we're doing things, but it's not all working. And a lot of it's not working by a long shot. And one of the things, and this is leading into a question here, is, there's success stories, but then there's also in our community, even at the Citadel, Mamie was referring to the Citadel Dance Center building. My wife and I own that. We'll have Black events and we'll have white events, and sometimes we'll just have events. But the cultural transformation happens in that building, and the same thing I've seen at the Mendel Center, and then I've also seen that we'll make an effort to try to bring in a diverse audience, and it doesn't work. It's a disconnect. What if you throw a party and nobody shows up? So I guess I don't know if this is more for Donna or the other panelists, but have you observed that as well in your work or in our community? And how can we make that better?
I think we have to be really intentional. It's not, yes, we need the passion and the drive, but we also have to study this. Really study it and see, what are the opportunities? What can I do? What are the alliances? Much of my success comes through partnerships. I've never just me. It's always inviting, engaging, and who else, is a thought leader, who else has resources, defining what currency is. All currency is not green. And so it doesn't have to just be someone who can write a check, someone who has contacts, resources, intelligence, brainstorm. So it's putting all of that together. It's just like Julia said, being fearless. I love that. Just do it. Let's do it.
That's good.
This is a time really of no regret. There's no regret, because we get to craft a new way. We are pioneers of a new era.
Mm-hmm.
New era. So I think that all those elements, to me, you put together for that.
I wanted to give panelists an opportunity to ask Donna questions directly too. If you have any questions, feel free to do that. I just wanted to invite you to do that if you're so inclined. But what I'm finding in these conversations as we get out into the community is that there are major disconnects. So as you're saying, being intentional and doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
Short of hiring you, which is very tempting at this point. I mean, what are there in your book, An Invitation to the Party? You've got this great kind of guideline for that. Investment, commitment, research, educating your artists and audience. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I still use those. The most important of those tools is research. Once you do your research, you know what direction to go to. You know exactly what you have to work with. So I really believe the research is critical. And I do that for everything I approach. I first make sure I understand, what is it that I have? What do I think I have? And who are the people that I would want to connect with? And from that, I can build a campaign and a strategy. But you have a lot of low-hanging fruit. You know, all of you all have talked about that, things that are right in front of you. And I'm sure you're doing some of this already. So you get to fine-tune it, you know, you get to try new things. But collaboration, that's the key. Work together, you know, as much as you can, and develop those, you know, partnerships that are sustainable. And the way I select partners are individuals who have constituents behind them. So I work a lot with the sororities and fraternities. You know, I work a lot with the links of Jack and Jill's. I work with the faith-based community. So these are low-hanging fruit. This is what's key in the Black community. They're organized, and you know, they support arts and culture. And so with that, you can build. Once you have that foundation, that invites success. And so you can say, oh, we already have 100 so-and-so, and they're, promoting it on the digital platforms. Then you build with that. So, you have it. You already have it. You just have to pull it in and give it some love and a direction and focus. Yeah.
Donna, I'd love to know your thoughts on, what you would say to the people who are on boots on the ground, pushing and advocating for this work on a community level. Our community has been doing this community development, collaborative, race relations work for a long, long time. And also, for the staff who have been for the last 6-9 months reinventing on a dime and hold this social justice work very close to their hearts and are working hard every day and are worn. What do you say to those people that are working, pushing and waiting for the change? What are the words of wisdom and motivation to understand the value of their work and the value in continuing it?
Well, first you thank them. I think showing appreciation is really critical. And so you find creative ways to thank people. Yes, we say the words, but there's also other things that we can try to do. It's a little more challenging now in the era of Zoom, but just think about that, because that goes a long way when someone really feels valued. I think that we're transparent, so we can't promise you what we don't have, but what we can commit to is working together to change our landscape. And I appreciate everything you're doing. So I think you set goals. I believe in dashboards. Dashboards are great because then everybody can see where we are. This is a metric. And so what is the dashboard that this staff has created? What are the pillars that you're saying, we want to achieve this? So that they celebrate that when it happens. That feels great. So for our social justice task force, our pillars are, the registrations, participation, the comments that we get from people, and those are pillars that we value. And so when we see that, everyone is inspired. Okay, let's do another one. Let's keep going. Because, we all have on our big girl, big boy pants. So no one's looking at, anything that can happen beyond what we can do in this virtual landscape. But you can look at how do we measure success. So I think that's important for them to see. And then you celebrate that together. And you set new benchmarks, inviting new people in. And so, there's these different tracks. So the events themselves, you want to look at what a success looks like. You want to bring in new cultural partners, new community partners, and how do they become a part of this fabric. So it's like you're making a quilt, and this quilt has all these elements in it. And this quilt represents social justice, represents uprooting, systemic racism. And with this quilt, everyone plays a key role. This is your patch. Without you, the quilt is not complete. And so helping people to feel vital, they're valued, is so important, and I can't tell you the benefit of saying thank you. We underestimate that. But when you're working really hard and maybe not getting what you think you should get, the thank you can really make a difference. Or for instance, like when the judgment came out about Breonna Taylor, that, somehow she shot herself and died, as opposed to, issuing what should have been, against a police officer. But anyway, what would be effective is, as a leadership, is to call the employees of color and say, I just saw this come out. You must be so devastated. I can't imagine the pain you're in, but I want you to know I'm standing next to you. Allyship is really important. It's really important. And that's something white people can do right now, can do all the time, is to demonstrate I am with you. I'm standing in front of you, and that inspires people of color to realize, okay, we're not here alone. So that's another aspect, that you can bring to the table. So you put all of those things together and make this amazing quilt.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I know we have success in our community too, and I wanted to give each of the panelists an opportunity to talk about, because I'm looking at each one of you and I see some of the success that you've brought into our community. We have such a generous and caring community in general. And Traci, I know your video, we had talked about even trying to play it, but we're going to make sure that we get the video link out. Not the census video, but your other one. I would love it if you would talk a little bit about that project and And then I want to make sure that we get the link out to everybody as well.
Good.
Sure. So I always get really emotional when I talk about this project because it was something that I really felt like was a divine moment and an opportunity. And to that point, as I was hearing the conversation, why I feel like I'm at this particular meeting right now is because I do think there is a gap for opportunities for youth in Benson Harbor, specifically those who lack access to transportation or to arts enrichment programs. So because I saw that gap and I knew the community and I was reared, like, I don't know if anybody on this panel knows Ms. Goins, but that was a strong arts leader in Benson Harbor. We came together with the Boys and Girls Club, 4 phenomenal kids, teenagers, got into a room. And at that time, Benton Harbor Area School District was in the media for everything that you could name. And as I talked to the youth, I just said, keep it real with me. Put it in a song. Tell me exactly what you want to say. Just don't curse because this is a funded project. But otherwise, say what you want to say. Right? I mean, literally, God is my witness. 15 minutes later, they had their verses, they had the chorus, they had everything. The adults really in the room at the time were there for creative direction. We had no intention for that video to be nothing more than something that we share with the community. And this wasn't the first time that this team has done something like that. The other one was like a club kid that we did with the Boys and Girls Club. And my whole goal is to challenge my students to go from consumers to creators, because so many of our students, they watch YouTube, they watch all these things, but they sleep on their own talent. And when that video, I mean, right now, I think it's close to 300,000 views on Facebook, collectively, probably 350,000 on a couple different platforms. But that was affirmation that, first of all, there is no talent like Benson Harbor talent, period. Second of all, when we amplify and mobilize youth voice, people hear it. So I'm so passionate about that work. And I'm going to leave with this. There was one book that was very transformative in my career. And that book is called For White Folks Who Teach in the Hood and the Rest of Y'all Too. And it hits on hip hop pedagogy. It hits on reality pedagogy. Mm-hmm. And it really showed me the power of hip hop as a teaching tool. And I promise you, when I was teaching in the 3rd grade, when I used Cardi B to teach my students how to do multiplication, everybody got 100%. Mm-hmm. Every single student. Is powerful. And I would just love to see hip hop pedagogy and reality pedagogy amplified in this community.
Traci, are you familiar with Dr. Bettina Love?
Love her. We want to do more than survive, right?
Pardon?
She wrote, we want to do more than survive, right?
Yes.
Yeah, love her.
Right, because what she does with hip hop is phenomenal. She spoke, we had her at NJPAC. She did a professional development training. She had these teachers flying. I think she is amazing.
Amazing. The hip hop ed movement is so slept on in a lot of communities because of the negative connotation of hip hop.
Exactly.
But I'm telling you, like, Dr. Christopher Emden, he has used it to teach kids math and science, which disproportionately African-American students are shut out of those opportunities. So it is powerful. And that is my plea to the powerful people who are in this room, who are on this panel, that hip hop pedagogy is a thing that we should really deeply explore for our youth.
I couldn't agree with you more. Mm-hmm.
And Grace, go ahead. Go ahead, Mamie.
What I think about, and I'm a proud senior citizen, and when I would hear the rap and all, I didn't know what they were saying. And then my son said, just listen. I started listening. I said, that's poetry. I said, if in school we put Shakespeare to that, Chaucer to that rhythm, whatever it was, our children would learn, be saying all those things and not know it because it's poetry. And that's why we need to use the things and come to where they are. I watch kids shooting dice, and when they throw them, I'm down and saying 1, 2, 3, and they're already swiped them up. They already know what the numbers were. So there's so many things that we need to translate into their language and understanding because our children are brilliant. That's what I think. Yeah.
I just wanted to share that Grace has the resources out there, the letter that Donna referred to, and then also the link to Traci's video is out there as well. I wanted to give other panelists an opportunity to speak about successes that they either have been involved in or that they've seen, and hopefully to motivate us all to inspire us and to continue our good work.
Yeah, if I could, I'd like to share a little bit because I think I think some of our greatest successes have come from knowing and understanding our failures. I think, as much as you need your choir and your people who are like, yeah, what you're doing is amazing, you also need to know why people aren't showing up. You need to know why your program that was meant for a population didn't reach them. And that's part of doing the research, is understanding who your audience currently is, who you want them to be, and then going and talking to those people, and not just filling the people in the room with the ones who already agree with you. Well, we know you agree because you keep showing up, but I need to know why these other people aren't showing up. That has led to some of our greatest successes and expansions by just being willing to hear where we got it wrong, where we missed the mark, where maybe we hadn't done enough research or discussion. And I think sometimes, we get confined by what we think things are supposed to be in this timeline, and this is the way that it's supposed to be done, and this is a structure. And that's why things like hip hop culture get shut out, right? Because it's not classical and it's not the way we're supposed to learn. And so then you miss entire demographics of people who that really resonates with. And so getting outside of what we think it has to be, what it's supposed to be, and just letting it be, right? Whether we're talking about bringing in hip hop, I mean, if you understood anything about the hip hop culture, you know that it's born out of the struggle. And so not only is it poetry, but it's also this release, this beautiful release that, people came together and to be able to bring forth their pain through art. And the way that it's exploded and transformed over the years and taken on many different faces. And so just being willing to bust timelines and expectations and what you think you have to do, and just continue that being bold and fearless, and partnering differently. In population health, we've partnered with the Krasel on a couple of projects, and our biggest one is coming, where we're merging what we call these resiliency skills, right, with the arts in ways that people can interact with this concept, right, that I need them to know, that I want our community to know, but instead of me just lecturing and presenting them with a couple of PowerPoints, bringing it to life through art that they can interact with, that they can experience, and it's going to travel throughout the community in the hopes of making it more accessible to people. So partnering in those places to bring together seemingly very different institutions or ways of being to create something new.
Thank you. It's important for us to capture and to act on. Thank you.
The Community Foundation we brought together teenagers from all over our county, and we brought in a group that did poetry slam, and the amazing amount of connection from kids who maybe would never have met each other, but they came together and everyone shared their story, and some in the form of a poetry slam. And somehow the art of that made sharing their stories safe. Their ability to get up, maybe they would never, I would have never said that. I would have never said how I was feeling about that. But that created an atmosphere in which connections were made and feelings were shared, and then education happened in a way that we've never seen before. I just feel like in so many ways the arts are a powerful thing that unites us and teaches us and challenges us. When Julia, you talked a little bit about the arts challenge we did to the community to help the arts organizations during this time when you can't earn the dollars that you would normally do by doing what you do. And a lot of the folks who gave, even if they gave $5, if they gave $10, or if they gave $1,000, they talked about, I would have at least gone to a show. This is so important. I want the arts to be here when this is over. I'm doing everything I can. Here's what I can give. Because the arts are personal. They are part of us. They are part of what makes us human. I love, Donna, what you said, be innovative, be brave, do the things that the arts do, and what the arts instill in us, in that innovation, in that bravery. Traci, your video was about innovation and bravery, and that's the arts. I just think, especially now, we need that. We need the innovation. We need the bravery. We need the arts.
Closing thoughts from anybody? I know it's getting late and it's been a week. These days are challenging, I have to say. Some days are easier than others, but this has been a good one. For me, I sure appreciate, excuse me, I appreciate everybody here in this discussion. And but I look for any closing thoughts from anybody.
I would just like to say thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Lake Michigan College Mendel Center. And I think about Lisa. She's a Twin City player. That's what she was in. That's how I knew her, when she was a little girl in the theater. And and we've done things together with the library and all. We've all come together. I think you have the audience. I mean, you have the, what do you call it? The choir. The choir is here. Yeah. And so I'm hoping that people that are listening are thinking of ways to get involved and to do things. Thank you for asking me to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mamie. Closing thoughts, anybody else?
I'd just like to say quickly, I would love to see this conversation continue to expand and grow so that locally we can start making even more strides, because I'm glad to hear about all the great work that is going on. And I would say, please open your arms and your ears to millennials, because there are a lot of young people in this city who are on fire, who want to be heard, who maybe just lack a little bit of funding. But I'm telling you, I got a crowd of millennials that could put on some really dope stuff. So we are here and we want to be heard. And again, just thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, there's room. I think about the MLK celebration reimagining, and your name's all over that. So consider this your public invite, and I'll talk to you more about that. But plenty more. There's so much opportunity out there. We have a lot of work to do. I appreciate you all. And thank you to Julia and the Krazel for collaborating on this. This was our first collaboration with the speaker series. And that was, I think it was a successful evening. So thank you. And thank you to Donna. Donna, thank you. You're amazing. And
thank you.
I have to read your new book. This has been on my shelf forever. So
hopefully my second book will be out within the year. It's called Champions for the Arts.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know if it was out. Okay, I didn't know if it was out already. I thought.
Not yet.
Okay, good. And I haven't missed it. I'll be looking for it.
All right.
Thank you all. This is being recorded and will be available on the mendelcenter.com. So if you have people that you want to share this with, Grace will be informing you how to get access to that. I'm not sure how quickly it'll be turned around to be available, but in the next couple of days, for sure. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Move
Goodbye,
forward.
Don.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.